Shalom and welcome to a very special edition of Parsha Talk. I'm Rabbi Elliot Malaman in Highland Park, the Highland Park Conservative Temple Congregation on Jamid. And joining me are my good friends, Rabbi Barry Chesler, seated in the Solomon Schechter of Day School of Long Island, correct? That's right.
Yes, I'm in one
And,
of the classroom where I have minyan every morning.
and seated in the Anshe Chesed in New York City, Rabbi Jeremy Kolmanovsky. Great to see you, Jeremy.
Shana
We
Tova,
are
everybody.
we're recording this a couple of days before Yom Kippur, and so we're going to focus today on Yom Kippur. And Yom Kippur starts with Colenidre. So let's try and get into the mood of Colenidre. Jeremy, what happens in your shul? What goes on in your shul?
Well, in a normal year, not like the last couple of years, one of the things I like about Colenidre is that the room is really full. We got a really big sanctuary, and there's 1,300 seats or something like that, and it's one of the only times that the room is really really full, and the gathering together of people who I wish everyone would come to shul every Saturday or every day, but they haven't seen each other for a long time. And this year we have a 500 person limit. It's not going to be the full dose. We're having two different kol nidres, one after the other, to maximize the number of people who can come. But in a normal year, one of the precious things of kol nidre is really watching this whole community materialize again. People sit next to the same people year after year, and they greet each other. And the power of kol nidre, at least there's maybe multiple levels, but one level is that we all say, b'yeshiva shel mala, b'yeshiva shel mata, with heaven's permission, but also the permission of all of us here together, davening together, we constitute the community. So I find that really special.
Barry, you have a different kind of experience. You're not a pulpit rabbi, but you are a congregant.
So the last couple years, I go to the Young Israel, which has a very small crowd. Maybe we'll have 15 or 20 people for Kol Nidre, but the way that the synagogue is shaped, it is very intimate. And it really, I've always found it to be spiritually uplifting to daven there.
In my shul, we do a procession of the Torahs. I'm sure you do that also. You bring all the Sifrei Torah, you take them all out of the ark, and then we assemble in the library, which is just down the hall from the shul, and as we're giving out the Sifrei Torah to, it's usually past presidents and other officers of the shul, I get a moment to spend with them, and I always find it very emotional. It's a very very emotional moment. I always feel like I'm the coach in the locker room, and we're we're all getting ready for the big game, and I say a couple of words that come on, we're going, we're gonna give it, we're gonna leave everything on the bima. But no, I say some serious things about just how beautiful it is, and of course, I think, and Jerry, I want to pick up on the idea that you mentioned, because it was so powerful a couple of days ago, Rosh Hashanah. The experience of a lot of people coming, this is new to many of us, and we are reminded of what we have missed over the last several months. And it's not an accident. It's the idea of these holidays, not only for what they are in content, but for what they are in form, namely all of the people and the energy that comes from all of the people. And so you see who is there, and yes, and enopo, the people that you're missing, the people that have passed away recently, and that, I think that awareness is a very very powerful awareness for everyone who is there. I don't know if you want to pick up on that.
So I just want to interject something. So when you were talking, Elliot, there's a wonderful wordplay, because things aren't new, they're new again. So it's a kind of renew.
Yeah.
That now we're seeing things the way they were a couple years ago, and we realize that both what we've lost with the passage of time, but that we have the opportunity to reclaim the past and make it new again. And that really speaks, I think, to the experience that I have, and I think a lot of other people have on Yom Kippur, that great sense of renewal, both personally and cosmically.
Yeah, I mean, I am not a terribly musical person. I don't sing well, and I don't have any musical education. But it's also impossible not to feel like, especially in Colenidre, the haunting tones. It's just so intense. Uh, and for me, I'm not like I don't have the vocabulary to explain how music works. We were talking about this before the we started recording, the intuitive way that music works on us, even when we don't know how it works, or the techniques by which a given piece of music works. But Kol Nidre, as the text, as rabbis have said for centuries, the text is not meaningful, really. The text is not obviously meaningful to renounce the misbegotten vows of the previous year or the next year or whatever it is. It's not really that. It's this musical weave that helps us feel like there was some stuff that happened in that previous year which we really didn't mean, or we really failed, and we want to be free of it to move forward. And then it ends off, "V'salachti kidvarecha." Okay, I've forgiven you. Now let's go do the work.
Right, and the music moves from minor to more minor, and then Venisla is major, and you feel this intuitively. You feel the yearning, you feel the mourning, and you feel that it's a piece of you. It's a piece of your life. Kol nidre v'yasarei v'chorame. And of course, the cantorial tradition has so embellished it, and it just soars. Um, Talk about things that are going on in the evening. Of course, part of the elements of Yom Kippur that appear at every service, whether it's the Aravit service, the Kol Nidre service, the Shachrit, the Musaf, and the Ne'ilah, the Mincha, and the Ne'ilah. Every service is composed of a certain basic set of building blocks. We're not going to do them in any particular order, but let's talk about slicha, and let's talk about vidui. So could you give me? Give me the 10,000 foot view of what a slicha is, okay? And why is it there, or what's going on liturgically? What do we mean by a slicha? And here, the reference to Adonai Adonai Rachum V'chanu. What is going? And the each service has that.
There, you want to go?
Yeah, so again, at the Young Israel I go to, they have slichot every morning since a week before Rosh Hashanah. And the way the calendar fell out, I was able to go a few of the times. Normally, I only go the first time, and we do it in the morning, so we don't have the Saturday night one. And we often don't have a minyan either. So it's interesting. That's the part of the slichot that we skip, is the 13 attributes. But when I think of the 13 attributes, we sing, they're part of the festival service. That's what we add to the Torah service on the Shlosh Regalim. And, they're part of this great process of forgiveness, because the worst sin, certainly from the point of view of Sefer Shmot, is the golden calf. And this is what's going to come as part of the reparation of the relationship between God and Israel, which never is completely restored. On one hand, the ark is going to be moved out of the community, but it speaks to this idea that we are in this together with God. That I was telling one of my kids or one of my students the other day that we need God, but God also needs us. And Yom Kippur, I think, is a time when we remember that we certainly can't do this without God, but neither can God do this without us. And I think that ultimately, Yom Kippur, I think we mentioned before we started recording, is really a holiday of hope. It's not a day of despair. But Tisha B'Av, by contrast, is a day of despair.
I think that's really important. And, if you read the sort of, I think the theological structure as Chazal understands it, as the Talmudic era rabbis understand it, Rosh Hashanah is much more of a downer day. That's Yom Hadin.
No, indeed.
That's the day that you have to go before the heavenly tribunal. That's the scary day. And Yom Kippur is the day you get the good answer, right? The Yom Kippur is a joyous day because you get cleansed, and as the final Mishnah in Tractate Yoma says, that God is the mikvah in which we all immerse and come out hope. There's a wordplay going on there because the word mikvah both means the gathering together of the waters and the hope. So somehow you get this purifying experience, and it is a holiday of hope. But over the centuries, I think thanks to music and thanks to the fact that one day is a feasting day and one day is a fasting day, I think those positions kind of reversed, and we do tend to feel that Rosh Hashanah is a happier time and Yom Kippur is a more like downer time. But I think, in fact, the exact opposite is what was originally encoded. That bit about the Yud Gimel Midot, and exactly as Barry said, this is the passage of Moses and God reconciling after the terrible thing of the golden calf. It's portrayed in the Talmud actually as this God is said to, so to speak, put on a talit and show us how to pray this and tell us that it is an irresistibly effective prayer. And I think it's exactly the point that you just said, Barry, is that God's praying that we will be reconciled, and we are praying that we will be reconciled. And we both know that there is like a lot of wreckage in the past. You or I may not feel like we have worshiped the golden calf, but I think if you say the 13 midot and you throw yourself on the divine mercy and say, Adonai, Adonai, Rachum v'chanun, you are metaphorically saying, I'm among these people of golden calf worshipers. And so we just gotta put it behind us, and we gotta move forward to something better.
I think it's such a powerful theme that we're still asking forgiveness for something that happened thousands of years ago, but it underscores a certain kind of reality in a human life, which is that mistakes happen in a person's life. I've spoken about this in the past, where saying, some of us are still atoning for things that we did decades ago, and that they stay with you. The emotional shrapnel of mistakes, they don't go away after a year. You do feel the residue of that from time to time. And what Yom Kippur does collectively as a Jewish people, Yom Kippur allows us to go back to primordial, events that shaped the people, and that created this movement between us and God, an annual cycle of restoration of that relationship. But what Yom Kippur does personally is it makes you go back to certain roots in your life that you are always trying to repair. And I think
Yeah.
that the verse then is timeless, personally, communally, and collectively.
So I want
Um,
to ask you a question about what you just said, which is that it calls to mind that there is a discussion in the Talmud there in Tractate Yoma about whether you should, if you've confessed one year, should you confess the same sin another year? So what's at stake is what's sort of at poetically or theologically at stake is, if you confess the same sin a second time, you're sort of implying that God didn't forgive you the first time, which is maybe not a nice thing to say about the El Rachum B'Chanun. But I think that the feeling of the accumulated schmutz that we have, the things that we feel guilty for, the things that we feel still need working on, I think it does last from year to year. So what do you gentlemen think? Do you think that one should confess the same sin multiple years, or one and done?
I'm going to take this one on. I think yes, you should confess it, because you are reminding yourself of where you come. It's the spiral, metaphor. You go back to a certain place. These things, a human life exists with all of its Samsonite collection. Okay, we all carry I mean, a good collection, and you you just don't leave that. It stays with you. I mean, that's what I don't want to say this, with too much cynicism, but the amazing thing about Yom Kippur is that we all think that that we're forgiven, and we go, we don't really change. A lot of people, maybe the optimistic part of us is that we will change it. Yom Kippur dangles in front of us the possibility of change, but in truth, change happens in a much more subtle and complicated way, rather than.
So I want to add to that. It's not, I think when I was much younger, I thought change was the whole point of Yom Kippur, that we would come this one day and with great resolve, we would come out better people. Now that I'm much older, I think that the message of Yom Kippur is acceptance. We don't change nearly as much as we want to, but we accept ourselves more for who we are. And that actually, I think, is what allows us to accept other people for who they are.
Very
And
powerful.
so it makes us much better people, not because we're more free of sin, but because we're more accepting of other people's sins.
I think that's really amazing. I mean, the Maimonides in the laws of Tshuva says this thing which people like, but really just is unrealistic for the reasons that you said. Is that when you really commit, when you really make Tshuva, you effectively say, I am not the same person.
Yeah.
That was another person, and I think that is not only unmoored from psychic human reality. I don't even think it's desirable. I actually think that having a sense of yourself with your own path and your own growth, the high moments, the low moments, the moments at your best, the moments at your worst, I think that's really important. So I would never want to say, I'm not the same person who did X and Y and Z at my worst moments. Actually, I think my best sense of myself has to be, the person at the best and the person at the worst.
Absolutely. Let's move to another major building block of the Tefillah for Yom Kippur, and that's the Vidui. The Vidui is familiar to us because it starts off with Shamnu Baganu ay 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 ay, and then it goes into the
And it concludes Oi.
From eye to eye.
a whole alphabetic acrostic of sins, all sorts of sins, 3 different sets of sins, and depending on which machzor you're using, and I have in front of me the new machzor, which is like the greatest hits of the machzor. You could really go all out with the vidui. I'm not sure exactly what to ask. I don't want to ask. I do want to share a favorite portion of the vidui. I don't know if that's a good way to do this, or just thoughts on the vidui altogether. And Barry, you're inching forward here, so go ahead.
Okay, so when I started out my rabbinic career as a pulpit rabbi, we used the Harlow Machzor. And one of the things I noticed is that the Al-Chet in the Harlow was half as long as the one in the traditional Machzor, because they only use 1 letter for each letter of the alphabet. So I was able to assure my congregation that conservative Jews sin less than others.
Obviously.
I think, a lot of people have made out much of the fact that most of the sins that are listed are sins of speech. And I think what is important about the Al-Chet is that I like the double acrostic, because there is a lot of things that we do wrong, and it's hard for us to quantify. We're much better quantifying what other people have done to us than what we've actually done ourselves. And I think that the Al-Chet, more than the Hashanah, which is just one word for the letter, but Al-Chet, you have that phrase. So you really have to think about it as you're saying it. You can't rush on to the next letter of the alphabet. And it can force us to really think about how we actually behave. What are the things that we do that we don't need to do? And there aren't really a lot of great sins in the Al-Chet as I remember them, right? We're not asking for forgiveness because we murdered someone. We're asking forgiveness for the things that we do daily that we don't really think about doing when we do them. And we have to remember once a year at least that these are wrong and we can do better.
Wow, is that true? So I just went to the Shin because I thought that Shvichut Damim, I thought that killing was in there, but it's Shvuat Shav and Sinat Chinam, false oaths, and it's the alphabetical. It's not Shvichut Damim, it's false oaths and pointless hatred, at least in the Lev Shalem. Let me pull a different one out here.
Sikur Ayin, I think, is one.
Sikur Ayin, but that's in the Samet verse. That's in the
Sorry, you're right. Sinat Chinam Shvuat Shav. Yeah, you'd say.
yeah. Wow.
Okay.
Wow. But then you go on to the other one, which I'm not sure actually if this is even in our conservative Machzorim, but the one that says, okay, and for the ones
That
for
we
the
need
ones
Chakat
that
and
require skila and sreifa, the different kinds of
Right, but we don't
executions.
say
I
those by
love
name.
those. I love those sins. That list.
I used to think that we read them all so that we would know what we were supposed to do in the coming year.
Indeed. What? Okay, so Jeremy, any highlights or takes or little homilies,
You
sermonettes?
know, I go back and forth between thinking whether these are like most of the prayer book, composed by, you know, artists, spiritual artists and sages who help us with their tremendously poetic words, help us put into words things that we might not otherwise have the tools to do, which is what I generally think about the tefillah. Or something just like something kind of general, an alphabetical acrostic to prompt you
Yeah.
to leave this set of words behind. You know, Ashamnu, Bagad, Ashamnu just means we're guilty. Bagadnu, we betrayed. Gazalnu, we stole. Dibarnu Dofi, we spoke stupidly. I tend to think that these things trigger in me jumping off points rather than contentful liturgy. So I try to come up with it's kind of too long to do in any one of the Al-Khair recitations. So I try to like look back over the year and identify moments when I've fallen into some of the general traps. Like Bagadnu, you know, we betrayed. Like this betraying somebody who trusts you, betraying a relationship that you have, that's important and deep. And so I just would say to people, I say to myself, and I would say to others, slow down there and try to come up with some moment where you really feel genuine regret and resolve to change. Regret is not enough. You got to have resolve to change over each of these things, and let the list prompt you to get there.
So I have a favorite piece in the Vidui. It's not in the list, although I love the music to Ashamnu because it's kind of ironic that it's upbeat and almost major, and you know, yeah, 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 we are sinful, you know. But there's a paragraph in there that never fails to leave me shattered, which is because and it's because I learned it's a long time ago when I was a young a kolbo. I used to go out to different shuls and do do the whole thing. So it's Ata Yodea, and I listened to a Jan Pierce album. He had Jan Pierce sings the High Holidays or something like that. I listened to a piece of it on YouTube. It's absolutely remarkable. Anyway, the paragraph is Ata Yodea Raze Olam, and it goes Ata Yodea Raze Olam, Ata Yodea Raze Olam. You know the secrets of the universe. V'ta'alumot sitrei kol chai, as well as the secrets of every single living being. Ata chofes kol chadre vaten uvochen klayot valev. You look into everybody's chambers of their stomach and their kidneys and their heart. Ein davar ne'ela mimeka. There's nothing hidden from you. Ein nistar mineganenecha. Nothing concealed from you. But the music of it, and I can't do it, well, is Ata uvochen klayot, klayot valev, klayot valev, klayot valev. And it just shatters you. That's it. You are an open book. You're guts are open. It's all there, and you can't hide. And so this is it. You're leaving it all there. And when we go to that passage, it's very visceral. It's literally visceral.
Literally visual. This is a reason why um, I think that a religious person needs a nice repertoire of theological images and tropes. I think that there's like times in your life when you feel God so intimately, and as the rabbinic phrase goes, speak to you from between the hairs of your head. And there are times when you just feel the divine loving presence and the creative presence. On Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, it is very helpful to have God as the cosmic superego that is the emblem and avatar and paradigm of the loftiest standards and ideals. And you have to measure yourself in your inevitable failure against the Melech Olamim. I think the Melech Olamim is a very helpful part to have in your theological repertoire. And I think the Bochen Klayot Ulev, that's really, you gotta have God as the Bochen Klayot. Like you gotta know that there is some reality
Searches your kidneys.
That searches your kishkas right out.
Okay.
And you can't fake that because God is Yodea Razeh. God knows it all. I've seen it. I know it. I got it in my hard drive.
Let's. I want to use this as the perfect segue because we have Chadrei Baten, which is the chambers of your stomach, your kidneys and your heart, to talk about the body, and the body is really central to our lives, and the body.
Hard to do anything without one.
That's basically it. It's central to Yom Kippur.
That was Neil Gilman's great thought about resurrection. Is that Rabbi Gilman, I think we all had him as a teacher, had some surprising theological positions.
Yes.
He was more or less a left-wing theologian, and then he would have these surprising things. He loved to duchen at the seminary synagogue. But I remember, his book, The Death of Death, one of his ideas about believing in resurrection is that we can't really imagine ourselves as people without our bodies. That central to our own identity is the body which we inhabit, and therefore he couldn't imagine there would be another life without the body.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing, there's a kind of paradox on Yom Kippur because we deny the body, so in fact we can concentrate on the spirit, but because we're denying the body, we tend to think a lot about it on Yom Kippur.
Well, Jeremy, give me some thought on the body. Give me something to think about as you fast.
Well, so Barry just brought up that kind of inverted paradox, right? That the ostensible thing is to transcend the body, but you can't because you're hungry and you're thirsty and you're tired. So maybe it's not that. Maybe it's ve'initem et nafshotechem. You're supposed to afflict yourself. That somehow causing pain. This is where I go basically. That somehow causing pain in a mild, a mildly aesthetic way, not a very intense aesthetic way in Judaism, but a little bit, actually can, if we can say this, take you out of your right mind. Because you spend the rest of the year making sense of your whole life, your failings, and you rationalize stuff, and you assiduously try to forget some stuff. And if you cause yourself some physical renunciation, and you don't eat and drink, and you don't bathe, and you don't wear what is taken to be comfortable clothes, and you renounce the life-affirming act and impulse of sexual relations, maybe that actually is a help of taking you out of your right mind and making you unable to make sense of yourself and your behavior in all the kind of like inadequate ways that you have been forcing you to look at it from another side around. Does that make sense?
No,
Yeah, as well
absolutely.
said.
So what do you put any stock in the idea that Yom Kippur is a rehearsal for death? That is, you're trying to live outside your body. Does that drive you at all?
I think more than a rehearsal for death, it's a rehearsal for the world to come.
Uh-huh.
That is, in other words, I think that the element of it, we dress in the kiddo, which is symbolic of death. But at the end of Yom Kippur, we take the kiddo off because we're alive again. And I think that the way I understand it is that Yom Kippur is about making ourselves more alive, that we should live more. You know, there's this great phrase in Thoreau, which of course I will not be able to remember, about he wanted to use everything he had in his life, everything that was within him, so that, you know, he would be able to say in modern idiom that he left it all on the field when he died.
Yeah.
Nebuch, he only lived to be 45, but
Oh my goodness.
yeah, the point is, I think that, you know, it gives more impetus to the idea that there is life after death. But we get to life after death by living a full life here. You know, we're not rushing to get to the next world. We're very much centered in this world, and we can, in a sense, get past death. I think that's what Yom Kippur is about in many ways.
There's just an experience when it works, when the day works, the feeling at the end is very intense. It's an intense feeling of satisfaction. So let's, as we have, just a couple of minutes left, let's talk about the end of Yom Kippur and that feeling. And perhaps after a day of fasting, you do have a certain glow. I mean, we talked about, before we recorded, about the glow on the face of the Kohen Gadol. And I think that we either have an internal glow or an external glow. I don't kind of light up like a 100-watt bulb, but I feel certainly lighter. I feel a deep sense of joy. Um, I feel accomplishment, certainly, because I'm a rabbi. I run a whole marathon service. That's certainly part of it, but it's deeper than that. That final shofar blast really, I find it tremendously emotional. I get very emotional about the whole thing. I don't know, Jeremy, you want to reflect on those moments at the end?
Yeah, the moments at the end. Um, I'm gonna hold in abeyance that rehearsal for death thing, because I think it really is, that's profound, and that's definitely a part of it.
Because of the
The
beginning,
end, huh?
because of Shema Yisrael and all that.
Because of Shema Yisrael, um, you know, that wearing of the kittel that you're going to go into the ground in, I was married in. I've had it on I don't know that I'm going to make this one little piece of cotton is going to make it another,
How many
50 some years until I'm 120. But you're going to go into the ground wearing this kittel as well. It's big. But the end is a total, you just lift off in Lashana Haba B'Yerushalayim, because you feel that this this period of having kind of torn yourself down a little bit, broken down some of your defenses, you come through it, and now you get expelled in a good sense, like pushed joyfully, born into a new year, and it's going to be a redemptive year. We talked a little bit before we started recording about there's a tradition that the Sefer Vayikra, book of Leviticus, says that every seventh year is, sabbatical, and this coming year sabbatical year, and 7 times 7, 49, into the 50th is a jubilee year, and the jubilee is like the macro sabbatical. Everybody gets to return to their ancestral homelands, and everybody gets a fresh chance economically, and they get to start all over again. And society now, some of the economic inequality is washed away, and the slaves go free. And that's the part that's really, I think, meaningful for Yom Kippur. The slaves go free. The slavery to some patterns that you've been struggling with, or that have hemmed you in, maybe they're going to release. So the idea is that in the book of Leviticus, it says that you you proclaim liberty throughout the land, familiar to all of us Americans from the Liberty Bell, and you blow the shofar. And the shofar at the end of Yom Kippur is associated, because we lost count of when the Jubilee is, maybe this year is the Jubilee. And so we're going to go free this year. I really hear that freedom in the Lashana Haba Yerushalayim, and the big shofar is just a clanging symbol of a cymbal crash
Yeah,
of a new liberation.
the big fanfare, the big ending. There.
So what I would add to what you said so beautifully, Jeremy, is this, that the three phrases before we blow the shofar is the Shema, which we hope will be the last words we utter on this earth. It's the Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Le'olam V'ed, which is the congregational response in the temple to hearing God's name pronounced as it was supposed to be pronounced. And Adonai Hu Elohim, which goes back to the story of Eliyahu in his fight against the prophets of Baal. And it is the culmination of the Rosh Hashanah coronation story, that at the end of Yom Kippur, we crown God King. And the Jubilee year, what speaks to me is that it is about a restoration of cosmic harmony. The slaves go free because that is supposed to be the natural state of a human being. The land goes back to its original owner. And so I think the one way to understand Yom Kippur is that the reason why we recount our sins is because our true selves are not sinners. We are originally not sinners, and we're supposed to embrace the cosmic harmony and reclaim the world as God meant it to be. And I think that for me, at the end of Yom Kippur, I have these intimations of cosmic harmony.
And the desire for an apple or some kind of thing to break the fast, a glass of juice, a piece of candy, a cup of coffee.
A cup of coffee.
Cup of coffee.
We have taken us on a journey. This is quite a journey. Yom Kippur is a journey, and as we conclude, we are thanking everyone for watching. We simply want to wish again to all of our devoted viewers and listeners, Shana Tova, Gmar Hatima Tova. May you have a sweet year, beautiful year, and may this Yom Kippur be fulfilling in every single way, in ways that we have talked about, in ways that will unfold before you. We want to wish everyone Gmar Hatima Tova. Have an easy fast, and see you on the next edition of Parasha Talk.
Gmar Tov.
Gmar Hatima Tova.